and welcome to today's webinar, Why You Need WinZip. And the first thing I'm going to do is send out a little survey, and you'll see it on your computer now, or you should. Do you already have WinZip on your computer? Simple yes or no. And if you can just click whichever answer and then send your vote. And so far, almost everyone has done that. We're at about 90% of the people. Okay, so just looking for one or two more people. Do you already have WinZip on your computer? Yes or no? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the voting at this point. And the good news is that there's a lot of you that do not have it on your computer. So you'll be ready to learn some things. Now, let me just say this. If you don't have it on your computer already, just a little thing. Um, for the best deal on WinZip, if you decide that you want to buy it, and this is not really a selling webinar, but if you do, you go to our link, 4kcc.com/WinZip. Now, I'm going to show that at the end also, and it will be in the follow-up email, so you don't really have to write it down, but there it is. So let's talk a little bit about WinZip. What is WinZip? All right, at its core, WinZip is a software which will compress and decompress computer files. That is what it started out as. That is the basis for the software, and it's a great feature. There are all kinds of compression software out there, and WinZip is one of the ones that just about opens everything. And for that reason alone, it's a great little app. But I'm going to show you some other reasons that you might want to get WinZip on your machine. I've had it on my computers for ages, and I can't tell you how many times I've used it, and they keep adding new features, some of which we're going to go over today. Now, one of the things I need to tell you is this is one of those applications where there are so many features, I could not possibly go over everything in a 30-minute webinar. So what I've done is I've taken what I consider to be the most important features of WinZip, and we're going to touch on those to give you an idea of what it can do and how it might be able to help you. Now, the first thing, of course, is compression. So let's take a look at that. You know, what is an example of compression? And on the screen, you can see what I did was I typed a sentence. The sentence was, here's an example of how you might use WinZip to compress a Word document. And that sentence contains 74 bytes. So that is characters, spaces, punctuation, etc. What a program like WinZip does, it compresses it by taking out all the quote unquote unnecessary things for transporting the file. So in the second sentence, you see that it took out spaces, punctuation, etc., and that brought it down to 59 bytes. That is a 19.5% reduction. Now, obviously, if we were sending this one sentence, it wouldn't be worth having WinZip for that. But if you had a large document, like for instance, one of our customers, they did a sort of a biography book of themselves, an autobiography, and that was a lot of pages, chapters. It was basically a book. Well, compressing that with WinZip, you're going to save probably between 15 and 20% space. So if you needed to send it to someone, I have another customer who wrote poems and sent it to a publisher, and we zipped all her poems. It was a full book of poems. We zipped that and sent it off to the publisher. So it conserves space. Now, in the early days of compression software, we wanted to save space because hard drives weren't very big. Some of them were, you know, they actually started out 40 megabytes. Then, you know, you got 40 gigabytes and 100 gigabytes and, 250 and 500. Now we're up to 1 and 2 and even as high as 4 terabytes of space. So we don't necessarily want to use a compression software because we don't have enough room on our hard drive. We probably have that room now, and if this was the only thing that WinZip could do, I might say to you it's probably not worth buying. Okay, but it's not the only thing that WinZip does. And even though we have that space, there are other reasons to compress files. Let's take a look at another example of compression, but this one is actually has to do with a picture. On the screen on the left, you see a picture of Gus sitting around on the carpet. And what I did was I added that to a zip file, a compressed file, and WinZip compressed it 17%. Now, this was a small picture. I had already reduced it. It was only 46.5 kilobytes to start with. But when you take pictures, say, with a digital camera, they are often 1.5, 2, 3, 4 gigabytes themselves. So I'm sorry, megabytes themselves. So, if you tried to send 10 of those or something, it might not go because they're too big. So WinZip, you could put pictures into WinZip, and if it reduces it by 17, 15, 17, 20%, that's a great thing so you can send it. So it doesn't have to be a written file like a Word document or a Adobe PDF. It can also be pictures. Now, generally speaking, the percentage is not quite as high with pictures as with documents. You saw where I did the word sentence that reduced it 19.5%. This picture is only 17%. Pictures, that has a lot to do with pixels and things like that, which are not important at this point. But just to know that by compressing the pictures, you can save space to send them and do other things. And this is especially helpful if you were sending to, if you were sending to someone like a photographer, instead of reducing the quality of the picture, you simply can compress it, and then on the photographer's end, he would decompress it and get the actual picture. So again, something that we want to look at. All right. So aside from compression, there are a bunch of actions you can do with WinZip. And we're going to look at 3 of those today because that's probably all the time we're going to be able to do that. But the first one I like to look at is encryption. Wow. With everything that goes on in the news, the NSA is supposedly reading our emails and scanning them and doing all that. Hackers are out there trying to get your emails and get whatever you send. A great way to send documents and even pictures with WinZip is to encrypt them. And right now, normally when you start WinZip, encryption is off. So what you can do is you can turn that on and use it, and we'll go over that shortly. The next thing that we're going to look at is you can reduce photos. You can reduce the size of photos with WinZip. Another great feature, although we're not going to spend time on that one today, but it's another good feature. The next one is you can convert to a PDF, an Adobe PDF. And again, we're not actually going to look at that today to save time. But you can take a document or whatever you zip and convert it to a PDF, which means someone can read it but can't change it. And then the last thing on the list of further actions is a watermark. We're going to take a look at watermarks. This, of course, has to do with photographs and is a really neat feature when you talk about doing sending photos and you don't want people to use them or copy them or put them online or something. Okay, so let's back up a little bit and talk about encryption. Encryption is I mean, there are just some things you want to that you want to encrypt. You know, if you have some document, like you might be in a place where things are not secure. Like maybe you're in a hotel or you know, you ran into McDonald's because you have to do something quickly and you want to send something. Well, if you're sitting in a place like that, like a hotel or McDonald's where Wi-Fi is open, someone might be able to intercept what you're sending and read it. But with WinZip, if you zip it and encrypt it, even if they intercept it, they won't be able to read it. So what happens is if I turn the encryption on and then add a file to a zip, what happens is I get this screen that you see, and it wants me to put a password in. Now, the main requirement for their password is it must be 8 characters long. Of course, what you have to understand is if you encrypt a file with the password, the person on the receiving end will not be able to open it unless they also know the password. Now, we're not going to send the password in email. You know, you might as well give the password to a hacker if you turn around and do that. You have to either predetermine the password with the person on the receiving end, or you have to call them on the phone or text them or something and say, I'm sending you a zipped file and it's encrypted, and here's the password. Again, you would never send the password in open email where a hacker could intercept it or whatever. You have to do that in a secure way. So, you know, for families, if you would, you know, send stuff encrypted, you know, as a family, you might have a particular password that you always use. Now, again, it's just like any other password. Don't make it so easy that it can be guessed or that you know, a hacker running software could, you know, just break it open and find out what it is. You don't want to do that either. So, but it's a great way to encrypt something so you can send something. You want to send something to your lawyer. You don't want anyone else to read it. Zip it and encrypt it. That's a great way to do that. Okay. All right, so that's encryption, and that's how that works. The next thing we want to look at is watermarks, and this has to do with pictures. I have some customers who are artists and photographers, and you know, one of their concerns is that they send something that they own the rights to, and you know, next thing you know, it's all over the internet. Well, one of the things that they can do, and you can do if you also want to, is you can put a watermark. Now, what's a watermark? A watermark is something that basically is on the picture, is kind of another layer, and it sort of saves the picture from being copied without somebody knowing where it came from or something like that. Now, I took Gus's picture that we showed a little bit, and I watermarked it with something that says confidential, do not copy. Now you can see it's pretty much going right across his face at an angle. The good news is when you do watermarks, you can pick where you want it, etc. So when you look on the screen now, you see it gives you a bunch of examples. First of all, you can watermark BIMPs, GIFs, JPEGs, PDFs, PNGs, and TIFFs. And then it gives you 9 squares, and you can choose what square you want the watermark to be. You can pick the direction, like I took one at an angle. I took the third direction from the left on Gus's picture. You can mark how transparent you want it to be. In other words, how much will you see the watermark or how little? And then at the bottom, you can pick what you want to say. Like I left the default, which is confidential, do not copy. But you could type in there anything you want. You can click on the font button and you can use what size font you want, which font you want, etc. Then you can put a check mark, include a date stamp, include a time stamp, and that will also appear as part of the watermark. So that's kind of a cool feature. Not everyone is going to use it, but again, if you want to get away from pictures for a minute, a PDF might be an example. Suppose you had a contract that you had written in Word and then you saved it as a PDF. You might want to watermark that PDF and put on there confidential or working copy or something like that. So it doesn't have to be a picture per se. It could be a document that's in the form of a PDF, but it's a great little feature of WinZip. All right, so now those are kind of cool things that you can do in WinZip. Again, I didn't talk about converting to PDFs, and I didn't talk about doing some other things with WinZip. But after you do whatever you're going to do, encrypt it, watermark it, doesn't matter. Then you have a bunch of choices in terms of what do you want to do with it. So suppose I want to zip a, a document and then I want to email it to someone. Right under actions, it gives you the option to email. Now, here's a word of warning. Okay, you must have an email client on your machine and be using it in order to use this feature. So for instance, if you open a browser, that would be like Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, whatever. If you open a browser to go to your email, this feature will not work. And if that's how you get your email, instead of clicking on email, you click on Save As, and you give it a name and you save it someplace where you know it is. Then you go to your email and you click for attachment and you go find where you saved it on the computer and you attach it. But if you use like Microsoft Outlook or for the people that are still using Windows Live Mail, uh, any kind of app like that that's on your machine. Like for me, Gmail, I use Easy Mail for Gmail in Windows 10. I could click on that and send it right to that if I wanted to. So that's how you use the email function, but it will not work if you don't use a client. So keep that in mind. Don't email me and call me and say your email feature doesn't work in WinZip. It does if you have a client. So that's one thing you can do with it. The next thing you can do is you can also share your zipped file right to social media. And if I click on social media, I get these options. Here are the 3 social media sites you can share to right from inside WinZip. You can share to Facebook, you can share to LinkedIn, or you can share to Twitter. So if you use any or all of those or some combination, you could zip something, you could compress it, you could share it on Facebook, and then people on Facebook, like the people that follow you on Facebook, could click on it and have access to that shared zipped file. Now, if you put a password on it, if you encrypt it, of course, they have to know the password. That still doesn't change, but that would be up to you. Another thing you can do is you can share via the clipboard. Now, this is really a neat feature. I can make a zip file. Let's suppose it's too big to send an email. So for instance, most email providers, they cap you at 10 megabytes or something like that. Well, if I wanted to send, say, 15 pictures that were 1.5 megs each, okay, now I'm up to 20 megs. I cannot send them at one time through email because it will be rejected. I could put them into a WinZip compressed file and send them this way. I would share to the clipboard, and what that does is it puts a link on my clipboard, and now I could open an email then. It'll say, well, it gives me the opportunity to name it. Sorry, I missed that. And click continue. And then it sends a link to the clipboard, which I can then paste in an email. And I've given you an example right here. That is the link that went to my clipboard when I clicked Save to Clipboard. Now, first of all, if you look at the link carefully, I know it's a little small, but you'll see it is HTTPS. That means it's a secure site. And if the person you send this to clicks on that, they would then be able to download the zip file. So what you're doing is you're creating, let's say you created a 50 gigabyte uh, zipped file. Well, there's no way you can send 50 gigs through email. It's just not going to happen. But instead, you save it this way. It's uploaded from your computer to the WinZip server, which is called Zip Share. It's uploaded there. You send this link. The person on the other end clicks on this link and downloads it to their computer. So you could send 50 gigs, 100 gigs, etc. Now, it takes a little time to upload from your computer, depending on your internet speed, but when it's uploaded, then they just click on it and download it. Now, when you buy WinZip, they give you 500 megabytes of space for free. Now, they'll try to sell you, like you'll get a follow-up email that says upgrade to ZipShare Pro. They'll try to sell you that, you know, for you to get more space. If you're using it this way just to send some files like this, my idea is don't do that. Do your 500 megs, like send your 100 meg attachment, and then when the other person gets it, you can delete that and you'll be back to 500 megs. So you can keep that amount of space pretty empty if you're not using it. But this is a great feature. I have things all the time. People want me to send them videos, and the video is too big to send in email. The video might be, I have videos that are, 250 megabytes, 400 megabytes, etc. I can send them the video by using this. First, I compress it with WinZip, and then I share it with the zip share, which I got right from my menu list. So that's a very cool feature. So let's look just a little bit at the different types or different versions of WinZip. Right now we're up to version 21. That's the latest. That's the one I have. And there's two versions. There's the standard and there's the pro. And when you get this, I will put this out. You could look at this separately, but everything that's on the left is included under the Pro plus the 5 things they have listed there. Now, some things may or may not interest you in the Pro, so maybe you would just get the standard, which is a little less expensive, and that's fine. Uh, you should know they also have a version for Mac. If you're a Mac user, it's not just a Windows thing. There's a version for Mac. There is also a free version for an iPhone and for Android. So if you get WinZip and have it on your computer and you want to put the free version on either Apple or iOS or on the Android, you can do that, and that is no charge. All right, so those are kind of all the versions: standard, Pro, Mac, and then iOS and Android. And you can take a look at those. Again, if you only need what's standard, you can save a few bucks by using just the standard. And once again, I have not even touched. There are other features, there are other ways you can use it, but we only have 30 minutes, which is almost up. So I wanted to take the features that I consider the most important, which is of course compression, encryption, and a watermark, and then the ability to share it so that you can send a large file that you could not send through email. It's a very good thing. If you want to look at WinZip, go to 4kcc.com/WinZip. If you go there, it shows the versions and you can click and see what the pricing is. And we get special pricing. I actually didn't look right now to see exactly what it is, but we get special pricing. Now, I will give you one other thing if you decide to buy it. They give you the option to buy what's called update insurance. I think it's like $7.95. And that might be something that you might want to consider. I do get that because upgrades can be, 19.95 or 24.95, and sometimes they can upgrade a couple times a year. So for 7.95, you're ahead of the game. All right, so that kind of finishes for us for WinZip. Just a few reminders now as we're at the end. We have 2 more webinars in the very near future. VPNs, virtual private networks, that is getting more and more important as, hackers and other things just become a little crazier. We're having that webinar on Wednesday, January 25th at 1 o'clock. Then Twitter, somebody asked me about Twitter, so we're doing another webinar. We haven't done one for 5 years on Twitter, and that's February 8th. You can get to these to sign up by going to 4kcc.com/webinar. For those of you on the Treasure Coast, our next seminar is Saturday, February 11th. Why Does Everything Happen to Me is the title. Our blog, I just have one more post to write, but I'm doing a series on how your email passwords are stolen. Right now, I think there's 4 blogs or 5 blogs in the series, and I'll be adding one more. Please go to 4kcc.com/blog and read that series. Start with the first one, which is the older one. Start with that and read those. So important. Uh, People think, well, no one would want it in my email. I don't have anything. They want your email account so they can spam and do other things. So please go to the blog and take a look at that series. And then finally, we have our specials, 4kcc.com/specials. Those change all the time. Be sure and take a look at those. So that's it for today. If you have questions, send me an email and I will respond as quickly as I can. But I will be putting this whole thing up in the next day or two. You'll be able to see the recording. And also, I'll give you the full PowerPoint if you want to look at that and any links that are important. So thanks again for taking time with us today. This is the most people we've had sign up since we started webinars, actually. So I found that interesting. But hopefully you got something out of it, and hopefully you can see a reason that there might be a good idea to have WinZip. Like I said, I've used it for years. I love it. So have a good afternoon. Take care.